Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Ukrainian military intelligence has been on a rampage a little bit lately. They've conducted deep strikes on the territory of Russia, as well as in Crimea, inflicting heavy damage to the Russians. Beyond that, we're going to look at the Russian surveillance campaign in Germany and how they are spying on what Germany is doing to prepare itself and secure its citizens. And beyond that, Ukrainian military commander-in-chief Alexander Syrsky is reporting that there are plans for the Ukrainian offensives. This and more in today's daily news. Let's start. We start by recapping daily losses for the Russians. The casualties for personnel is 1,040 people, 7 tanks, 7 armored fighting vehicles, 52 artillery systems including mortars, 238 UAVs, and 126 various vehicles. The first report from the Ukrainian military intelligence reports that a struck concentration of the Russian anti-aircraft missile brigade in Krasnodar region. They report that 12 personnel have been killed and dozens more injured. This attack brigade has been deployed and operating on the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions of Ukraine in the south and have been big problem for Ukrainian drone aviators. Most likely, specifically this strike on this anti-aircraft brigade is what allowed the Ukrainian military intelligence to conduct their next attack, which was in Crimea, where Ukrainians dealt massive damage to the key Russian targets. Interestingly, the video starts with Ukrainian drone showing the inability of the Russian Panzer system to shoot down this drone. And we see 5 misses by the missiles launched from the Panzer system. After that, we see drones flying over the sea surface and striking Project 02510 BK-16 landing boat and other drones flying deeper over the land and striking these spheres that actually contains one of the radars of Russia called Nebo SUV. That radar installation by itself costs a good $100 million right there, but we see some other targets being displayed here, and one of them is the radar station from the S-400 system with estimated cost of $50 million. Already for a while now, Crimea became a graveyard for the Russian high-value assets. They need to bring in the radar station into the peninsula, as it is key location to scan the horizon for any kind of aerial threats to other parts of the front line. Yet, it is also a very vulnerable position, and Ukrainian military intelligence and other groups constantly are attacking this location and inflicting severe losses to the Russians. And the third report from the Ukrainian military intelligence is a strike in the Krasnodar region, where it is reported that a Syrsky oil refinery has been struck. The oil refinery is one of the key refineries for Russia, where 2.1% of all Russian oil is being refined, which is very notable for a single point on the map. But critically, we also know that the strike was extremely precise, and it hit exactly the refining part of the facility that is critical to the operation of this facility. Therefore, the whole facility right now is offline. A Syrsky refinery has already been struck previously in the war, just over a year or almost 2 years, and it has been repaired since then, but now it's been struck once again and it's now out of commission once again. Kyiv holds a farewell ceremony to the journalist Victoria Roshchyna, a very unfortunately direct example of the Russian brutality. Victoria Roshchyna cared a lot for people. She went on the occupied territories to report how Russia is abusing people on these occupied territories. It was in the south of Ukraine, where she was detained and later transferred to Taganrog into the Russian mainland. There she was systematically tortured, abused, denied food and water, denied medical care, psychologically pressured, and most importantly, beaten daily, which unfortunately led to her body giving up under the hands of her abusers. The Russians tried to hide their crimes against humanity and smuggle her body back into Ukraine in a body exchange program. They reported it as an unidentified man that was missing body parts. It was only thanks to Ukrainians that are actually caring for their dead that meticulously identified the body, and they realized that all of the removal of organs was there just to hide the systematic torture that occurred to Victoria. Therefore, yesterday, Ukrainian prosecutor general charged the former head of this detention center in Russia with the crimes against civilians. This is another example to underscore why it is important that this war ends with a just peace, because these people that conducted crimes against humanity, torture, they need to be not celebrated in Russia, not receive medals like it is happening now, but they need to be brought to justice. This is the world that we need to fight for, not this weird situation where there is a land where torturers get additional benefits if they go out, kill, torture, and murder all of the people in the other country. President Zelensky also awarded Victoria the Order of Freedom posthumously. I quote, "She is awarded the Order of Freedom for her unwavering faith that freedom will overcome everything. Honor and bright memory of Victoria Roshchyna." Unfortunately, the internal war in Ukraine is still ongoing. There's plenty of traitors and there's plenty of people that will do anything for the right money. And in this case, Ukrainian law enforcement have detained 2 agents of Russia, Ukrainians, boy and a girl, both aged 17. They assembled and planted an explosive device in the city of Zhytomyr. This is not a frontline city, it's a city deep within Ukraine. And to maximize casualties, they filled the device up with bolts and screws. Moreover, they also attached a mobile phone as a detonator for device, so the Russian FSB would be able to use this mobile connection to detonate this device remotely, when the target was supposedly next to it. Moreover, to help Russians find out when exactly it was possible to detonate this device, they installed a surveillance camera that was linked directly to Russians. Russia is panicking a little bit because India, after the Trump's additional tariffs have been threatened, remember there is still 21 days lag before the tariffs come to power. But there is already reports that some Indian oil purchasers have stopped buying Russian oil, to which Russia promptly responded by lowering their discount on their oil by $5 more. In any case, it seems that whatever Donald Trump has been doing is working, and even if India will be buying Russian oil, they will be paying Russia less than they were paying before. The European sanctions on the Russian shadow fleet is working, and the Russian-financed Nayara Energy in India is actually asking Indian Ministry of Transportation to provide it with oil tankers, as a lot of the shadow fleet is now not able to carry the oil products from Russia. We will see what will be the response from the Indian government, but it is great to see that European sanctions are actually doing their job. Ukrainians and Romanians have established a direct railway connection between Bucharest and Kyiv, allowing a direct connection between the 2 capitals. So potentially already very soon, once the tests are over, we will see the ability to go from one capital to another with just one train. That would be a fantastic development and would simplify a lot of logistics for all parties involved. Turning over to remind us that Russia is actively waging warfare against the European states and other parties in this world. Russia does not distinguish between hybrid war and non-hybrid war. And recently, the sources are reporting that Russia is actually sabotaged the Azerbaijani oil destined for Romania and other European countries by mixing in chlorine that could seriously damage oil infrastructure within the European states. This is a direct sabotage not for Ukraine, but instead for us in Europe. Again, we need to look at this very closely, how exactly we are responding to the Russian aggression. Because not only the direct sabotage is there, but Russia is also spying on us non-stop. The reports are that from January to March, 536 drones were spotted over military installation and critical infrastructure in Germany. Let that sink in. 536 drones just from January to March. Now, we don't know if they're Russian or not, but let's be real here. Therefore, it is crucial to keep the pressure on our governments and continue sending them messages saying, what are you doing about this? How are you responding to this? How is our state becoming more secure? A notable shift in the Ukrainian society has been reported by the Gallup poll. It is stated that only 22% of the Ukrainians are ready to fight Russia until the full return of the occupied territories by force. Instead, 73% of Ukrainians would prefer a diplomatic solution to the war. But here it is important to recognize that the fact that they're looking for a diplomatic solution is not the same as agreeing to any kind of Russian terms and agreeing to secession of any territory. Instead, 76% of Ukrainians are categorically rejecting any kind of a peace proposal coming from Russia, instead opting out for a peace that could be enforced by the European allies with potential deployment of some peacekeeping forces on territory of Ukraine. There is a lot of factors that are explaining this change of stance, but most notable ones are the fact that Ukraine has been on the defensive for a very long time, and we saw that when Ukraine is going on the offensive, then usually there is a swing in the polls that support Ukrainian victory. Secondly, the changes within the governments in the Western powers have also shown to be inconsistent, specifically the United States and Donald Trump coming to the office. But more importantly, generally, Western powers not supporting Ukraine strongly enough. At least there is a strong perspective that the Western world doesn't really want Ukraine to win, and instead they just want to see Ukraine fight until Russia bleeds out, which obviously sours the perspective of a lot of Ukrainians, and not so many of them are already seeing NATO as a definitive answer to the problem of Russia. The EU Council has allocated 3.2 billion euros to Ukraine under the Ukraine Facility Program. This program was expected to align Ukraine closer to the European states, and it outlined a number of reforms that Ukraine needed to do. It is stated that Ukraine was able in the period to fully implement 13 out of 16 required programs, which is a very good result overall. And finally, just to overturn all of the doubters of Ukraine, because I do hear a lot of people being frustrated that Ukraine is on defensive, that supposedly Ukraine cannot do an offensive operations anymore. For a long time, I knew that it's not true, but I am a little bit deeper involved into tracking what goes into Ukraine when it arrives and so on. And from that perspective, I did notice that Ukraine is not utilizing a lot of the things that is being sent to Ukraine. So they are being accumulated somewhere. And just yesterday, we had Commander Syrsky talk with some journalists and answer some of the questions. And he answered a very specific question with regards to offensive operations, with regards to something like Kursk. And response of Syrsky was as follows, that we have plans, of course. You can't achieve victory in defense, only in offense. And I think this is critical to underscore for two reasons. Reason number one, for people that are stating that Ukrainian defenses are about to collapse, that Ukraine is about to just lose everything. No, it's not. It is clear that there are resources that are coming to Ukraine and are not being utilized, but instead they're being prepared for something else. So if push would come to shove, then there would be resources for Ukraine to stabilize any kind of a quote-unquote collapsing front lines. Therefore, when I state that Syrsky is potentially more lenient towards giving away some territory, even if potentially, as we're going to discuss very, very soon about the Battle of Pokrovsk, even potentially considering giving up some of the territory to further then fight back against the Russians and retake some territory back. So there's definitely offensive operations being planned. And secondly, is that Ukrainians are planning to fight this war further. So Ukrainians are not exhausted. Ukrainians do have plans, and including the offensive plans that potentially can change the course of this war. But Syrsky also underscores that it is important to exhaust the enemy, to inflict such damage on the enemy that it will be harder for the enemy to resist any kind of offensive operation performed by Ukrainians. So I wouldn't put too much hope in this for now, but it's a bit of reassurance for all of the people doubting the Ukrainian capabilities. Thank you so much for watching today. Keep supporting Ukraine. Keep believing in Ukrainian armed forces. I love you. Slava Ukraini. And I will see you next time.